Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. But before we even get started, I've got to ask you something, guys. Have you been watching the impeachment trial? Have you been watching the impeachment trial? Look, if for some reason these senators decide to give Donald Trump a pass and not convict him for what has occurred, they would not, it's not about hurting Donald Trump. It's about preventing this from happening again. And what it shows is that there would be a party in this country that is willing to have an insurrection with no consequences. The insurrection either works, and if it doesn't work, oh well, just a little fight, 5 people dead, no big problems. This is, America is on stage right now. And we have to determine as a country, and those of you who have senators that are in these states that seem to not want to convict Donald Trump, I suggest you start calling them, because this is worse than a domino effect. This is an example effect. This is an effect that people around the world will look around and say, if the United States can't get that straight, why should we? It is so important that we get this stuff straight, my brothers and my sisters. Donald Trump must be convicted. And every senator that votes to acquit Donald Trump, every senator that votes to acquit Donald Trump, we will be in their skins. We will be reminding everybody, and all of us who have a platform should be out there making videos, writing blogs, and putting in the American psyche that these are guys, yes, they need 67, that these are guys that were willing to put our country at risk. At this point, this is a patriotic issue. This is a national issue. This is something that is not a joke. People died. We almost lost our democracy. Now, this happens because our Constitution is, it's immensely weak. I want to remind you of something. Everybody that's listening here, this is a lot of times Democrats don't like when you say this, but it's important that we say this. Donald Trump came closer to winning, even though he lost the popular vote by 7 million votes, than Hillary Clinton almost won, even though she lost then President Trump won to Clinton, even though he lost to her by 3 million votes. Here's why. Hillary Clinton, if she, in the 3 states that she would have needed in the Electoral College, it would have only required 80,000 votes. But guess what? 44,000 more votes in 3 states. Even with Donald Trump winning by 7 million popular votes, would have given Trump the presidency. Now, I find it disgusting. I find it embarrassing for them that there are people that are fighting so hard for a win when your guy lost in a landslide of American votes. Are they saying that the individual votes of people is worth less on the coast than those in the middle states? Are they saying that those folks in the middle states are more worthy than those on the coast? How is that determination being made? Please tell me. A few weeks ago, I showed you guys a piece that said 67, or I think it is probably 67% of the GDP of America comes from blue counties. I'm not saying that to create a blue versus red. There are reasons why, and we want red counties to fight for what's theirs. But what we have to say is those people who control red counties are the ones who keep them in dire straits. It's not progressive policies that do it. Look at every county in this country, and the counties that are doing poorly are the counties that are red counties. I mean, it is so time now for us to start telling the truth about what's going on in this country. For too long, too many have been misinformed. And it's not the fault of the people in the red counties. It is the fault of the news media not telling the truth. Here is let me go ahead and put this on the screen because I want you to see this. Blue America, the title of it is, let me put it on the screen real quick, and then we'll go into the show. But this is so important, and I'm saying this for my red brothers and sisters. Harris County is blue. Harris County is blue, and it produces more than just about every other county in this country. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. 71% of our gross domestic product comes out of blue counties. And there they are on the screen. If you notice, there's Harris County in there as well. And 29% of our GDP comes from the red counties. In other words, if we want to be technical about it, the blue counties are supporting the red counties. The blue counties, and that's just a matter of fact. And let me play what I did for that show right there. Let me do this. Fareed Zakaria had a great documentary out last night called The Divided States of America. I need to put it in a bigger amplification for you because I want you to see it better. There we go.
Phil needed to put together a critical business.
United States of America, what is tearing us apart? Let's start it over. And Fareed Zakaria had a great documentary out last night called The Divided States of America, What is Tearing Us Apart? And there's a particular clip that I really honed in on, but more importantly, there was something that wasn't said about that particular clip that I think we need to explore. So let's show the clip, and then we'll take it on the other side.
To better understand how the country has become so polarized, so divided by class,
Trump 2020!
You need only to look at this map. In the 2020 presidential election, the counties that voted for Joe Biden, taking up a small part of the country's geography, were responsible for 71% of the nation's economy. That vast sea of red, the counties that Donald Trump won, contributed a meager 29% of American GDP. It illustrates that the United States may be one country, but two very different worlds, divided by two things above all: where you live and whether you went to college.
People call it the diploma divide. More educated Americans are overwhelmingly becoming Democratic. Less educated Americans moving much more into the Republican column. This is particularly true among white voters.
Just look at the breakdown. Blue America is mostly urban, densely populated, diverse, with a large share of college-educated workers in professional and creative jobs.
When people talk about the degree divide, that's really the class divide. Having a college degree, that's actually the strongest proxy for who is in the professional and managerial elite.
On the other hand, red America is home to the country's beautiful heartlands and vast farms that feed most Americans. It's not nearly as crowded. It's whiter, with more Americans who work with their hands. Fewer here attend college, and they don't like the urban professional elite. This divide has only been sharpened by the pandemic. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, college-educated workers were far more likely to telework and maintain their standard of living than those without education.
I think people who didn't go through those 4 years see the rules being broken all the time. By bankers, by economic elites, and they feel like, hey, if somebody's going to break the rules and be on my side as a rule breaker, I'll accept that.
I love the poorly educated.
For many white working class voters, Donald Trump seemed a messiah.
The forgotten men and women of the United States are forgotten no more. You work hard, you pay your taxes, you do all these things, and you were forgotten. They forgot about you.
And Trump did nothing for them, but he knew how to exploit them.
Okay, I just wanted to see that little piece there. Okay, Eric, no, I'm not saying that you need to be. Eric says, and I want to bust that right away. Actually, it's supposed to be the United States, right? So who cares about? Yes, it's supposed to be the United States, but that's not how the Trump people do it. They do it as if we are insurrectionists or we are taking something that belongs to them. That is how the Trump people see this stuff. Now, you also says, so it sounds like they're saying that you aren't a person if you don't have a college degree. That's not what we're saying at all. At all. In fact, we're saying the opposite. What we are, in fact, saying is that the places that are generating all the wealth right now is our blue counties. And we have to ask ourselves why the red counties are not performing. And the red counties are not performing because they are run by a value set that is not very productive. It is that simple. The numbers speak for themselves. If the things that so don't blame blue counties for being or for something that's done poorly in these. Let's look at McConnell. McConnell lives in a state that depends on the federal government. He begs the federal government, not begs, but when there's money allocated, blue states like New York, blue states like all the other blue states, Connecticut, they go ahead and they put a lot of money into the federal government. That money then goes into Kentucky for all their programs. And why do they need all of that? Kentucky has a very low tax rate. And what else is there about Kentucky again? Oh, we don't like to pay for services for our citizens. So other people pay it for you. And then you go ahead and wonder, why is it that your citizenry isn't moving forward? It's the policies of low taxes that do very little to invest in humanity, invest in your people. Now, let's look at a place like New York. Let's look at a place like California. They have their problems as well, but they have a hell of an upper educational system. They also take care of the people's health care. Let's get real. We have to get around from these policies that are restrictive, these policies that are anti-human, these policies that support the wealthy, because if the wealthy don't have a lot of taxes to pay, they want to be there because they don't have a lot of taxes to pay. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get it all scales. It all scales. It doesn't matter about how many people live in New York versus how many people live in Kentucky. In fact, we could make the argument that because Kentucky is more sparsely populated than New York, that Kentucky has better options for their people to be more wealthy. But that's for another time. But that's not what happens, because the massive land that you have in Kentucky is controlled by a few, the rich few that you guys many times in Kentucky support. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get the program started. A little bit late, but we're going to go really quick. Okay, let's go to the program. What is it going to be called today? The title of the show today is, here we go. Let's go ahead and put it on the screen. There, it's on the screen. Thom Hartmann discusses his new book and insurrection. Host slams GOP impervious to truth. Absolutely impervious to truth. Radio host Thom Hartmann discusses his new book and the insurrection and more. Nicolle Wallace slams GOP. She also points out how impervious they are to truth. It is important. As I watch the case on TV right now, what I find amazing is that some senators can see that, they can hear the evidence, and they're still going to vote against it. But let's listen to what Nicolle Wallace had to say, and then we'll take it on the other side. MSNBC host conservative Nicolle Wallace continues her attack on the Republican Party, justifiably so. It is amazing. In 1 minute, listen to what she had to say, and then we'll take it on the other side.
But when you look at that Republican vote, it could have been Linus and Charlie Brown. They don't care. This is a story about Republican subservience. It's also always going to be the day that the GOP broke up with the Constitution. One of the most compelling parts of the case made by House impeachment lead manager Jamie Raskin and his colleagues was that the actual text of the Constitution holds for a remedy precisely like what is on the table, and that the Republicans are staring at their toes and fidgeting in their seats and doing paperwork instead of looking at what they enabled, instead of looking at what they ushered in, is the story. It is the twin headline with re-traumatizing and reliving the attack on the Capitol. I think the other headline out of that vote is that Chuck Cooper, who is, again, someone with nothing to lose, or with nothing to gain, everything to lose professionally, reputationally, and perhaps even socially. I don't know if some of these people are personal friends. He went out there and told the truth. They are now impervious to the truth as a political party. They are now not capable of hearing facts. So all-consuming is their devotion to an ousted, deplatformed ex-president.
And also this.
And the fact that after the insurrection, which all evidence suggests was terrifying for all the members, all the senators, all the members of the House, all their staff, all their family members who they made those phone calls to. The fact is, a party that comes out of hiding, out of shelter for their lives, and votes to disqualify an election they all know wasn't fraudulent, is irreparably broken.
And that is concerning. I mean, we make fun about, oh, these guys are loony, oh, these guys are factless. The thing about it is, no, those senators know the truth. They absolutely know the truth. They've so misled their people now that their people only know material that's been misleading. So now they cannot afford to tell the truth about anything, and they are stuck. That is bad for the country. It's a good thing right now that we have a sane party, even if you're not in complete agreement with them, that has a slight majority governmentally. But we have to remember that this is not a democracy. And because this is not a democracy, we have to always win overwhelmingly for those people who, for the thinking politicians to take power, we have to beat by the popular vote by a lot. Therefore, those that are in power now, you have to execute. You have to show people that government work, because the lies and misinformation that's been told to a sect in this country is so large that unless we keep the power on and also work methodically to bring quite a few people back. Remember, Trump got 74 million people. Biden got 81. I mean, we were just so happy that the progressive base and all the different bases worked so hard to really bring people out. But remember, that's the second highest amount of folk any party, any presidential candidate had ever gotten. He got more than Hillary Clinton got when she beat him by 3 million votes. So, folks, we got a lot of work. And what Nicolle Wallace is doing right now is really important. She is a sane conservative that is at least has the bona fides to go ahead and talk about her former party. Very good job. I love Nicolle Wallace. I simply love Nicolle Wallace. Nicolle Wallace is not only good on the facts, but she's just seems to be that genuinely nice person. Even when she was a Republican full-fledged and she spoke to you, she never, or I think she's a darn good woman. So kudos to Nicolle Wallace. Anyhow, folks, going back to the issue about the people here, we have to get to those people. We need to get to those people. I mean, Q and all these guys that they're using to really mess with them. Now, earlier Eric said, are you saying that people have to go to college to mean something? No, not at all. But what I will sure hope is that we start back teaching critical thinking. Because if you had critical thinking, Q would not work. Here we have Tank 28. He just said, wait till March 4th. That's a new date that Q told them, right? First it was the 6th. Then when the 6th went by, they had another date. Before Q just keeps stringing them along, right? Q is not even a person. Q is a money-making machine. I did some research on Q, right? Q is a whole conglomerate of different websites and people that are milking all those people who believe in Q, and Donald Trump's a part of it. You notice if you take a look at when you watch the Capitol, this is so important. watch the Capitol. Watch all those Trump flags and Trump hats and MAGA hats. Guess where they bought that from? Trump. Okay? They bought that from Trump. So this is a huge money-making machine for Trump to keep this crap up. So it's not going to stop anytime soon. He's going to milk these people, and he's going to string them along. Oh, it's March 4th. When March 4th comes, it's actually we misunderstood what Q said. It's really April 17th, right after tax day. And then they'll have another date, and they'll keep stringing them along. And by then, they're so vested. They're so vested in this conspiracy. To leave that conspiracy after being so vested in it means to some of them that they lose something of who they are. As opposed to just saying what I would say, whoops, guess I made a mistake. Shouldn't have trusted Q. Q is a joke. Q was just and always has been a money-making joke. Buy the Q t-shirts. Buy the Q this. Not like Politics Done Right trying to tell you, hey, buy the Politics Done Right t-shirts, because I am telling you what I'm doing with the money. I'm supporting this program. I'm making sure that I can survive to support this program. But Q, send them. And the Q, it's a perfect capitalist setup, right? Q just goes there, take your money, and call it in. Look, the Thom Hartmann interview comes next, but before I want to go ahead and do my pitch, if you are on YouTube right now, folks, please consider clicking that join button and becoming a subscriber. Why do you want to subscribe? And if you are not on YouTube right now, if you're on Facebook or any one of our internet stations, go ahead and click on the link that I'm putting in the chat right now, which is politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. What that does is we put out a whole lot of progressive videos, progressive blogs, progressive messages, sometimes articles in the newspaper, and we do all of that to make sure that we get our message out. The right has a whole lot of people that pays to do that so that it seems like they have more strength than they really do. They have much less strength than we do. We have the posse. PDR Posse is one of the pieces of Posse. What we do is we go ahead and we create all these progressive data out there, and we put it on the internet, we put it in newspapers, everywhere else. Why? So that our message can come up in search engines and otherwise. So please consider clicking that join button and join, or go to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. That is how we make a difference. Alternatively, you can support us on Patreon by going to youtube.com/Patreon. youtube.com/Patreon, and that's what I just put that link in there. Or you can support us at PayPal by going to youtube.com/PayPal. youtube.com/PayPal. The book on the screen right now, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, is one of the books that we have here. Our goal is to speak to everybody. We don't want to leave everybody we have a lot of conservatives that listen to the show as well. And we want all these folks to also know you are a part of this family. We may differ in ideology. I am going to try like hell to talk to you and talk to you about what we think is best for your families, for you, etc. You can give the alternative viewpoint. Who knows, maybe you'll be able to tweak some of what we have to talk about. I have no problem about that, but we must talk to everybody. We mustn't just think about this being a 50+1 because you can't really govern with 50+1. You need more. You need a more solid base. So please consider getting my book, How to Speak to Your Right-Wing Friends, Neighbors, etc. Here is the link on Amazon. But if you want to cut the middleman out, you can buy the book directly from us. How do you buy the book directly from us? You go to politicsdoneright.com/store. Let me tell you, we have been selling. In the beginning, we sold a whole bunch of these books, and the reviews have been very, very good. Lately, it's slowed a bit because, of course, you reach a certain point. What I want to ask all of you to do is to share these links for the book, share these links for our show, share these links for our PDR Posse, and invite others to join us, to buy from us, etc. And why do we want that? That is how we can support what we're doing. Now, one other thing is Bridge MCP, one of our leaders in the PDR Posse, she created a cup, and that's a cup on the screen that I have right now. you can go ahead and get the cup. I mean, her cup pretty much explains what we are all about. And that's why I love when she built it, when she designed the cup. Because to the bottom of the cup, you notice what it says, we the people. And you notice it shows left and right. The idea is we want to talk to everybody. We want to be a part of everybody else's life. And you can actually get that cup by going right there. Now we're going to bring on Thom Hartmann. After I've already given you all that stuff, the store and all of that good stuff, let's go ahead and bring on Thom Hartmann, and we'll then take it on the other side. Tom has a great piece, a whole lot to say. Here we go. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis. Today we are honored once again. I've told this guy every time he comes out with something new, we've got to have it. And Thom Hartmann is here with us.
Hey, Egberto.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? You answered before I got a chance to give you the proper introduction, my brother.
Okay.
I want to give you that. Thom Hartmann is the progressive national and international talk show host. He's been named the most important progressive host by Talkers magazine. He's also a New York Times best-selling author whose books have been translated into multiple languages. The Thom Hartmann Show has been a top 10 talk radio show for over a decade. It's one that all of us live up to. All of us that are doing this the guy. And he's here to discuss his new book, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, Reclaiming Our Democracy from the Ruling Class. Thom Hartmann, how are you doing today, my brother?
I'm great. It's always wonderful to be here with you, Egberto.
Well, I mean, it's always great being with you. It's always great seeing you. Last time we met, we could actually shake hands and have a hug in where was that? Philadelphia,
Philly,
I think.
wasn't it?
Yeah, Netroots in Philadelphia. Now we're all locked up for a year.
Yeah, it's very strange.
But
we're still alive.
Hey, we're still alive. And we made it through so far, so good. We just have to hold on a bit longer. But anyhow, Thom, you told me you were going to write this book. And, I hadn't read it. I scanned through it. I knew the interview was coming up, and I said, I got to get to it. And I went to a particular part on it to say, you were reading the tea leaves, man.
Mm.
You were reading the tea leaves on the oligarchy, the formation, not only the formation of the oligarchy, but how it needed a sort of a insurrection to come. I mean, lead the insurrection to kind of metastasize itself. I tell you what, why don't you tell me, why did you write the book, first of all?
Well, I wrote the book because I've been watching this process my entire life, and I'm getting increasingly alarmed by it. Over the last 20 years, we have seen America pretty much slide into full-blown oligarchy. And oligarchy is defined as rule by the rich, essentially. A small number of very wealthy people take over the political system of a nation. And the principal signal of an oligarchy, the signature that you see in the data that indicates oligarchy, is when government stops doing what the majority of the people want, which is what's called democracy, and starts doing what the oligarchs want, the very, very rich, which is oligarchy. And a couple of years ago, Gillens and Page, these two researchers out of Northwestern and Princeton, published this mind-boggling study where they went back and looked at pre-Reagan Revolution, by and large, what the majority of people wanted, pre-1980, what the majority of people wanted got translated into legislation. It's how we got Medicare and Medicaid and long-term unemployment insurance and food stamps and Pell Grants and housing assistance and anti-discrimination laws and civil rights laws and voting rights. I could go on, right? I mean, the list would be 100 things long. That all happened in the 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and right up until the early 1980s. Reagan comes in and flips our system upside down. It really was a revolution, and not just an economic revolution, a political revolution. He brings in the oligarchs with a little help from the Supreme Court, and they set up shop and take over. And what Gillens and Page found was that they published their study in 2014, but what they found is in the roughly decade and a half leading up to that, since about 2000, what the average person wants, as measured by public opinion polls on public policy, almost never gets translated into public policy. It's the association between the two has been reduced to what they described as random noise. Whereas what the oligarchs want, what the top 1% wants, is almost always translated into public policy, or when public policy is created, it's most often driven by what the oligarchs want. You know, there was basically one legislative accomplishment of the entire 4 years of the Trump administration, a $2 trillion tax cut for billionaires and big corporations. That's oligarchy. The problem, and the thing that keeps me up at night, is that oligarchies tend to be very unstable. They tend not to last very long, typically not more than a generation. And what comes out of them typically is one of two things. Either the people rise up, overthrow the oligarchs, and you flip back into a democracy. This is when a democracy becomes an oligarchy. Either the small d Democrats or small r Republicans, the people who believe in a democratic republic, flip the country back, which happened here in the United States twice. Once with the Civil War, when we fought back the oligarchy in the South, and once in the 1930s when Franklin Roosevelt fought back the oligarchs who had crashed the economy. Or the oligarchs look around and say, hey, pretty good system we got here. We're scraping all this money off the middle class, and we're getting richer and richer. And these pesky people, we got to do something about it. And they flip the government into a police state. And you're watching that happen right now in Hungary, in Russia, in Venezuela, in Brazil, in the Philippines, in Turkey, in Egypt. I mean, you could just go through the list of countries that at one point were democratic. The oligarchs took over, and then when the oligarchs were challenged, when the people were in the streets, the oligarchs said, "Okay, that's it. End of discussion. We're going to go full police state." And we're on that knife's edge right now here in the United States.
You just mentioned police state, and did it bother you when you realized there were a whole lot of organized ex-military guys going through the Capitol during the insurrection?
Didn't surprise me at all.
Not at all.
No, I mean, in fact, that's what you would expect. The fascism is most attractive to people who have what are called authoritarian personalities. Robert Altmaier wrote a book about this called The Authoritarians. John Dean, based on Altmaier's work and research, wrote a book called Conservatives Without Conscience, which is about authoritarianism within the conservative movement. And, the broad estimate is about 20% of Americans are strong authoritarians. And 99% of authoritarians are authoritarian followers. They're authoritarian leaders in their own homes. They tend to be the husbands who beat their wives or yell at their kids or whatever. But in the grand scheme of their lives, they're really authoritarian followers. They're looking for Big Daddy to keep them safe. This comes out of, or the best guess is, there's a big debate about this in the psychology community, but the best guess is this comes out of periods of terrible insecurity during their childhood. And so, they're looking for somebody to say, don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'm in charge. I alone can solve the problem.
Trump, yes.
Trump. And they bind to that Big Daddy, and just, you can't peel them away, because this is now the life raft for them, the psychological, emotional, and political life raft. And people who join the military and people who become police officers are authoritarians are way overrepresented in those two populations. Instead of being 20% of the population, the percentage of people who are authoritarians in the police and the military is, depending on which study you look at and which area you're looking at and which part of the country you're looking at, almost always well over 50%, and sometimes much
over 50%. Wow.
Yeah. So of course, if you've got authoritarian followers in the military or among police departments, they're going to bond with an authoritarian leader like Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley or Tom Cotton, the guys who are competing to be the heirs to the mantle of Trump. And so, no, I wasn't surprised. I was horrified, but I wasn't surprised.
It was disconcerting because I wonder many times if Donald Trump thought he had more support in these forces. Remember how the National Guard didn't show up until very much later, and if he thought, I wondered if the plan just kind of went awry a little bit, but that it was much better planned than we thought.
I think it was, and I think we've got the smoking gun memo now that the acting Secretary of Defense, who Donald Trump put into his position the day after it was announced that he lost the election, issued this memos to the DC National Guard saying, you may not show up unless I give the permission. And for 4 hours at least during the storming of the Capitol, numerous people were begging him for that permission, and he was withholding it. So, you know, I sure hope the FBI is interviewing this guy and all the people around him.
But my question about that, what do you think the intent would have been? To hurt the Congress people, leave us without, decapitate the government, the congressional part, and then
hang Mike Pence, assassinate Nancy Pelosi and whoever else you can find. And then Donald Trump would walk in and declare himself emperor, basically, and it would be the end of the American experiment and the beginning of strongman rule, just as has happened in Russia, in Hungary, in Germany in the 30s, in Italy in the 20s, et cetera.
Do you think that would have been sustainable with the current military that we have?
It's hard to say. You know, where Trump tripped up is he has strong support in the military and among police, among the rank and file, because that's where your authoritarian followers are. He didn't have the level of support that he needed in the senior command of the military. I believe that the one force that probably prevented America from experiencing a complete Trump coup was the Joint Chiefs. You know, was
the letter that they wrote, maybe
the whole military command structure. These guys take seriously their commitment to the Constitution and to American democracy.
Right. It is a shame how close we came. Now, part 2 of your book, how oligarchy led to the Civil War. Tell me, why did you do that?
Well, you know, this is I mentioned earlier that twice we've had oligarchs rise up and challenge democracy in the United States. The first was in the first half of the 1800s, and it was the result of a technological innovation, the cotton gin. Mm-hmm. Cotton seeds are notoriously difficult to pull out of cotton. Mm-hmm. And the bottleneck in cotton production was taking out the seeds, what's called cleaning the cotton, or carding the cotton. And it had to be done by hand, you know, and Eli Whitney invented this contraption, the cotton gin, that could do the work. One machine could do the work of 50 enslaved people trying to clean the cotton. But it was a very expensive machine, and it came into common, it was widely available to purchase by 1815, more or less, 1810. It was invented in 1798, but it took a while to get it to market. And so the largest plantations in the South bought these cotton gins, and now they were literally 50 times more productive. I mean, cleaning the cotton was the big bottleneck between growing it and shipping it. Mm-hmm. You know, most of it went to Europe, much of it went to Europe anyway. And by eliminating that bottleneck, they became so much more productive and so much more wealthy that they wiped out all their smaller neighbors, because there were a lot of 10-acre and 50-acre and 100-acre cotton farms in the South, across the South, a lot of them. And by the 1830s, by the middle of the 1830s, the vast majority of them were gone. They had been run out of business. Their land had been bought by the giant plantations, and the people who'd lived on those farms were now tenants. Still growing cotton on the same land, and living in the same house, but they didn't own it anymore. Sort of like what we saw when Reagan deregulated, stopped enforcing the antitrust laws in '83, and suddenly we had farm aid. Willie Nelson trying to help out farmers. It was kind of the same dynamic. Well, what happened was, over the next decade, from 1835 to 1845, these giant plantations. The people who owned them reached out to take over political power in the southern states, succeeded in doing that, and turned the southern states, which already were police states. I mean, the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrol, right, in Virginia and South Carolina. I think we've talked about this on your program. Yeah. So they already had that police state apparatus, and they flipped their government into just full-blown fascist oligarchy. But the problem they had was that seeing a functioning democracy north of the Mason-Dixon line was was rousing the rabble, as it were, and not just the people who were enslaved, but the white small farm owners who'd been thrown off their land as a result of this consolidation. And so the oligarchs of the South decided that their best means to survival was to end democracy in the North, and so they declared war on us. And we fought that war, and 600,000 people died. And, we broke up that oligarchy to a certain extent. I mean, if Lincoln hadn't been assassinated, we would have succeeded. It's a huge mistake Lincoln made in choosing Johnson as his VP, but that's a digression. That's a whole nother story. So then the second time it happened, again, it was technology. It was the railroad and steel and oil oligarchs who came out of the Industrial Revolution in the 1880s.
Standard Oil and all of them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Rockefeller, Carnegie, et cetera. And Morgan and these guys, rose up and took over the government again. In fact, in the 1920s, Harding, Hoover, Coolidge, and Hoover put them in charge. I mean, you had Morgan as the Secretary of the Treasury. And they crashed the economy, of course, because they had just, during the roaring 20s, so-called, the wealth of average people actually went down. Pay actually went down. But all this money went to the top, and they had to have someplace to put that money. They poured it in the stock market, created a huge bubble, and the rest is history. But that opened a space for Franklin Roosevelt to take them on. And when he started talking about he was going to tear down the oligarchy, he called them economic royalists. When he was going to take them down, they got this group of 100,000 right-wing veterans, this very, very conservative veterans group, signed up to go to the White House and kidnap and either kill or imprison Franklin Roosevelt. And they were going to replace him, with a good conservative Republican. And this was an actual coup attempt.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to. I read about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason that it fell apart was because it's called the businessman's conspiracy. You can look it up. Was because these guys tried to hire Smedley Butler. He was the most famous military hero in the country at the time. The hero of World War I and the Spanish-American War. And Butler blew the whistle on it. And and the Congress held hearings for about a week, and then FDR shut it all down because he was afraid other people would get ideas. But he then went to war with the oligarchs and put them back in the bottle. And they stayed there until the 1970s, until the mid-1970s. And then the Supreme Court let them back out again with these two decisions in 76.
Vallejo, yeah.
Yeah. So
that is a shame. And now I think this is the one that you call now a third oligarchy rises with Reagan. What would you call Trump, the Trump era?
Well, it's the logical extension of the process that Reagan put into place, which was shifting America from being a functioning democracy and into a full-blown oligarchy. You could build a case, and I do in the book, that Reagan and many of the people who were with him on this actually thought they were doing the best thing for America. Back in 1951, Russell Kirk, in his book, The Conservative Mind, that kicked off the modern conservative movement, animated Barry Goldwater and William F. Buckley and all these other guys, made the argument that if the middle class continued to get wealthier and wealthier, at that point in time in 51, the middle class was actually, their wealth and their income was growing at a faster percentage rate than was the wealth of the top 1%. And Russell Kirk said, if this middle class gets wealthier and wealthier and more independent, you're going to start seeing young people disrespecting their elders. You're going to see a breakdown of society. Young people will disrespect their elders. Women will disrespect men and their husbands. Minorities will demand equality with white people, and society is going to fall apart. And at first and throughout the 50s and even the early 60s, people thought, Russell Kirk, he's a crank. And Barry Goldwater's into him, but he's still a crank. But then in 61, the birth control pill was legalized. So by 64, 65, you had a full-blown women's rights movement in the work, wanting rights in the workplace and independence from their husbands. I still remember in 1972, it was when the law changed. In 71, Louise and I got married in 71. For her to get a credit card, the bank required my signature.
Yes, imagine that.
Couldn't get credit cards. So anyhow, you had this full-blown women's rights movement, women burning their bras. You had young people saying, hell no, I'm not going to go to Vietnam, and burning their draft cards and smoking pot and growing their hair long. And you had African Americans, Martin Luther King leading a civil rights movement. And by the late 60s, you had cities that were on fire. And at that point, the conservatives who had been poo-pooing Russell Kirk looked around and said, holy crap, he was right. And our society is disintegrating, and we've got to dial back the wealth of the middle class. And so Reagan comes into power thinking the most effective way to do that is to destroy the unions. And as a special bonus, the unions are the principal funding source for the Democratic Party. So, hey, we can create a permanent Republican
Permanent majority, moral
Exactly.
majority. Yeah. What is interesting is that there's another piece that I read. Like I said, I selectively go to certain parts of the book, and I noticed you spoke about something I like to talk about a whole lot, and that was how the Powell Manifesto was so well designed to execute the skeleton of this movement. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Well, in 71, in the late 60s, as I said, it became obvious to these conservative politicians that they believed that Russell Kirk was right. And they thought that we were in the middle of a process that was going to lead to anarchy and the disintegration of America. And so the head of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Eugene Sindor, met with his old friend and neighbor, Lewis Powell, who was a tobacco lawyer, and asked him to come up with a blueprint for recovering America's greatness, for stopping the chaos. And what Powell said was, okay, we've got to pack the courts with our people, no more of this civil liberties BS. We've got to take over the schools and the colleges. We need to control the textbooks in elementary and high schools, and we need to be putting our people in as professors in poli-sci and econ classes in particular. So no more socialism being taught in our schools, and history classes as well. Our people need to buy the media. We need to get control of the media and create our own media infrastructure. We need to build think tanks that can get our ideas out and produce papers that will be, our letters to the editor and op-eds that will be published all over newspapers and across the country, and on and on and on. I mean, you're very familiar with the Powell memo too. And that was in 71. In 72, Nixon put him on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
He was part of these two decisions, Buckley and Bellotti in 76 and 78, that said that when billionaires or corporations own politicians, it's no longer considered bribery or corruption.
Oh no, it's free. It's speech. Exactly. It's speech, man. You remember we did a few things together, moved to amend in Washington D.C. I mean,
yeah.
So yeah, it is mind-boggling that how things come around. Now, folks, before we go any further, you have to get this book, American Oligarchy, and let me tell you, because I think one of the things I like about your books is that it doesn't only come with complaints. It actually says what we have to do, and and whenever I pick up your book, that is actually the first place I normally go to kind of check out. Okay, so what do we do? So, folks, you need to go ahead and get that book. It is The Hidden History of American Oligarchy: Reclaiming Our Democracy from the Ruling Class. But if I have Thom here, I got to pick Thom's brain on where we are right now. So, Thom, where are we in our democracy? But before I handle that, I want to say, neoliberal versus conservative differences.
Well, increasingly, there's not much difference. I mean, historically, conservative meant in favor of social change, but slow and gradual. Don't disrupt things in the process of improving things. That was kind of the functional definition up until the 1950s. Obviously, there were strains of segregationist racism within the conservative movement and bizarre machoism and things like that. But they were viewed as the lunatic fringe. I mean, witness Dwight Eisenhower's 1954 letter to his brother Edgar, saying, there are some Texas oil billionaires who think you can get rid of Social Security and do away with these social welfare programs. He says their number is small and they are stupid. But the neoliberal philosophy, the idea that basically society should be run for the ruling class, is just an extension of this idea of creating stability in society. And, it infected the Democratic Party in large part because Reagan was so effective at destroying the unions in the 12 years of the Reagan-Bush administration that Bill Clinton had to go hat in hand to bankers and insurance companies begging for money. He created the DLC so that corporate money could be funneled into the Democratic Party. Before that, the Democratic Party was almost entirely funded by average working people through their union dues. It was the unions. But Reagan gutted the unions. When he started,
What is so sad about the unions part, though, and I find it. I don't know how. I try to find a way to get around it. It's amazing how negative a large percentage of Americans are to unions, and that is because of how they, these guys have done such a good job of defining socialism, defining unions, defining what those keywords mean, and it kind of cauterized into people's heads that union bad, socialism bad, all these things that come
40 years
across
of
the way.
propaganda.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what I was going to say that I think that the job that you do, the job that we're trying to do in the independent progressive media is what has to keep getting done, because the reality is right now, there's no one there's no one really trying to, I don't want to sound presumptuous and say educate Americans, but to at least let them be more aware of how things really work. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the key to solving our, I talked about the media in the book, that we need to be building a strong progressive media infrastructure, and we don't have that right now. But in terms of where we're at right now, I mentioned that oligarchies typically don't last more than a generation before they either are overthrown or they become police states. And the principal weapon that oligarchy uses against democracy is cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
Cynicism is poison to democracy. And because democracy requires citizen engagement, and if citizens become cynical, they don't engage. And therefore you can't have a functioning democracy. And so we are, we've got about 18 months here. And if Joe Biden and the Democrats can't destroy the filibuster and actually accomplish things for the American people so that we can go back to what public opinion polls show the majority of Americans want, the majority of Americans get. I mean, for over 20 years now, the majority of Americans have wanted no more student debt, no more medical debt, national health care, et cetera. If they can't pull this off in the next 18 months, then the next president will be a Republican and will be almost certainly a fascist. And that's the end of the American experiment. Because they'll say the same thing they did, with Obama and Clinton. Nice talk, but hey, you didn't get a damn thing done.
And I'm wondering if I'm seeing Biden, who I once considered a true neoliberal. I'm actually seeing another side of him.
Oh yeah.
With the 1.9 trillion and sticking to it, with the stipends that he's given to the American people, which eventually should turn into something like basic income, I am starting to see sort of a resolve that says we're not going to repeat the same mistakes. And if they do that, even if they're not a full-fledged, full progressive, I think it's a good start. Your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. And it's why I have not been willing to go full circular firing squad on Biden at all. I mean,
not at all.
I didn't like that they are, that they're going to means test this $1,400, but, I'm not willing to take anybody down over that. The future, I can't say this strongly enough, emphatically enough, the future of democracy depends on the ability of the Democratic Party to prove that a democracy can deliver results to the people. And the Republicans are going to fight that every step of the way because they want that cynicism. They want people to say, those Democrats, they talk big, but they never do a damn thing. I think I'll vote for the Republican. I mean, keep in mind, Donald Trump stole Bernie Sanders' platform.
Yes.
Donald Trump ran on raising taxes on rich people. He said, I'm going to get slaughtered by this thing. People are going to hate, my friends are going to hate me. He campaigned on a national health care. So he said, everybody's going to have health care and it's going to be cheaper than you can imagine. It'll be better. And he campaigned on bringing factories home from overseas. This was Bernie Sanders' agenda.
Yes.
He was lying through his teeth, but people were like, okay, cool. We're ready for some friggin' change.
But you know what is interesting, Tom? Steve Schmidt, Republican turned Democrat, said exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Democracy.
It's not like it's a mystery. It's fairly obvious, I think.
Maintaining our democracy runs through the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah, I agree. And Schmidt is talking like I am. I mean, he's like, we're at this crisis point. I was first shocked and now very impressed by Steve Schmidt, and I'd love to have a conversation with him. I doubt he would be willing to do it in public about.
I tried to get him. I mean, I wrote a piece about him. He liked the piece. When he liked the piece, he followed me. I said, the good opportunity to get him now. I try to get him. When you get him, let me know.
Yeah.
but but anyway,
I'm
Tom,
curious why he stuck with the Republicans so long if he's this thoughtful and insightful.
No, he's a true conservative. He believes in small government. He's a true small government type conservative where the free, I mean, he doesn't. He's a good guy, but he doesn't believe government should be as big as it is. I do believe in big government. I think government needs to be big. That's my opinion, because I think it needs to be bigger than any
It needs to be as
corporation.
big as it needs to be to meet the needs of the people.
Of the people.
country.
Yeah. And that also means being bigger than the corporations as well, because if the corporations are bigger than the government, they own the government,
Right,
so
then you have oligarchy.
yeah, exactly. But anyway, Tom, I asked this, you know this. What would you like to tell me that I didn't ask you and I should have?
I think you did a very good job, Egbert. I can't say it.
Hey guys, if Brother Hartmann says that, it means something. Tom, it's been my pleasure to have you on Politics Done Right as usual. Folks, please remember to get the book, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, Reclaiming Our Democracy from the Ruling Class. New York Times bestseller, buddy. Tom, thank you for being on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, Egberto. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on your program with you. You do great.
Thank you. I simply love that guy. He's our commensurate, progressive radio show host. Love the guy. I think all of us walk in this guy's shoes. I mean, this guy has been at it for a very long time, and he has put it on and given it the best that he could throughout and through in. So anyhow, look, thank you guys. Welcome aboard, Bridge MCP, Bridge. AVQ, welcome aboard. Haiku 33, Marco Rudnin. Let's see, Tank 28. We also have Deborah John, welcome aboard. Deborah, it's too long for me to read it right now, but I'll read it. But actually, I read it already. Eric Hayes, Brother Hayes. Let's say Ted Moore, welcome aboard. Who else is here with us today? We also have, para ver quién más está aquí. Christine Park, welcome aboard. If I miss Ted Moore, welcome aboard. If I miss you, E2247, welcome aboard. Let's see. Deborah John, I think I got you. Paul Fleming, welcome aboard, Paul. Great seeing you here, buddy. I think I saw you here yesterday, too. Let's see who else is here. If I miss you again, just drop me a line at the bottom, and I will be more than happy to scroll back down. KMR Summer, welcome aboard. Okay, going up, continuing. I think I got E2247. Christine Park, I got her. Okay, I'm still scrolling up. E. Willie, somebody using by name. Okay, it's fine, no problem at all. Carol Davison, welcome aboard. Let's see, Carol Davison, I got you in. And KR Summer, I got you in. Okay, I think I'm close to the top. I hope I'm close to the top. Okay, I think I got everybody. In case I didn't call your name out, drop me a line. It'll end up to the bottom, and I'll get a chance to salute you, because I want to salute everybody. Please, folks, if you Melissa Noble, welcome aboard. Egberto, as someone coming from another country, you know more than stop it. Okay, and Paul Fleming, ATL checking in. Absolutely so. Look, guys, I appreciate you being here. Please remember to go get my book if you have the wherewithal to do so. Here is the link to my book. For those of you who want to cut out the middleman, go to my store, get my book, get Bridge MCP's cup, etc. And guys, I forgot to put my brother on the screen here. Look at he got his cup. Look at that. Check that out. Norman Reynolds got his cup. He's have that serious face on, and he's drinking from it. That's my brother from another mother. So anyhow, and please, folks, go ahead and support us at PayPal as well. politicsdoneright.com/PayPal, as well as Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. Egberto, why do you have to put those into your show every time? That's the only way. That's the only way we get the support from all of this. So, folks, thank you so kindly for having been here. Couldn't do this without you. Join our PDR posse. Support the program. You have a wonderful day. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.